How does a single night with my husband's brother lead to divorce papers served in front of my colleagues? What happens when the villain, everyone pities, quietly collects evidence instead of fighting back? Can I still blame him for ruining our family when all his revenge was done by the book with the law on his side? I'm Aurelia Fenwick, and I thought I knew exactly how my story would end. I was wrong about everything. It started on a Tuesday evening in our kitchen, the same kitchen where Jonas and I had shared coffee and dreams 8 years ago when we bought this house. Now it felt like a battlefield where words cut deeper than any knife. "You're never here anymore," I said, watching Jonas pour himself cereal for dinner again. "Eva asked me yesterday why Daddy doesn't eat with us." Jonas looked up from his bowl, exhaustion written across his face. At 36, he still had the gentle eyes that made me fall for him in college, but lately they seemed distant, focused on everything except me. "I had parent conferences until 7, he said quietly. "You know how demanding the school year gets." "It's always something with you." I slammed my coffee mug down harder than necessary. "The school, your students, your lesson plans. When do I get to matter in your life?" "That's not fair, Aurelia. You matter, you know you do." But his words felt hollow, rehearsed, like he was reading from a script he'd memorized to keep the peace. "Do I? When's the last time we went out together? When's the last time you asked about my day, my job, my feelings about anything?" Jonas set down his spoon and rubbed his temples. "I'm tired. Can we talk about this later?" "You're always tired. You're always busy. You're always somewhere else, even when you're sitting right here." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Upstairs, I could hear Eva playing in her room, probably trying to drown out another one of our arguments with her music. My phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Micah, Jonas's younger brother. "Hey, how are you holding up? You seemed stressed at dinner Sunday." I glanced at Jonas, who had returned to eating his cereal like I wasn't even there. The simple fact that his brother had noticed my feelings when my own husband couldn't spark something dangerous in my chest. "Fine," I texted back, "just the usual stuff." "Want to talk about it? I'm a good listener." I looked at Jonas again. He was scrolling through his phone now, probably checking emails from parents or reviewing tomorrow's lesson plans. Always working, always somewhere else. "Maybe," I typed. "That would be nice." When Jonas finally looked up, I was smiling at my phone. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of suspicion, or maybe just curiosity. "Who's that?" he asked. "Just work stuff," I said, sliding the phone into my pocket. "Nothing that would interest you." That night, as Jonas graded papers in his study, and I lay alone in our king-sized bed, I stared at the ceiling and wondered when we'd become strangers living in the same house. When had his dedication to his students become more important than his dedication to his wife? My phone buzzed again. Another text from Micah. "I know things are rough. If you ever need someone to listen, I'm here. Family should support each other." I held the phone against my chest and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Someone cared enough to check on me. Someone noticed when I was struggling. I didn't realize then that this moment, this simple exchange of texts, would set everything in motion. I didn't know that my hunger for attention and validation would lead me down a path that would destroy everything I thought I wanted to protect. All I knew was that for the first time in forever, someone was asking how I felt. And Jonas wasn't that someone. 3 weeks later, I found myself sitting across from Micah at a small cafe downtown, nursing my second latte, while he listened to me vent about my marriage. "He came home at 9:30 last night," I said, stirring my drink absently. 9:30, from a faculty meeting that supposedly ended at 6. Micah shook his head sympathetically. He had Jonas's same dark hair but softer features, and at 32, he carried himself with less of the world-weary exhaustion that seemed to define his older brother. "That's rough, Aurelia. I mean, I get that teaching is demanding, but marriage should come first, right?" "Exactly." I felt validated in a way I hadn't experienced in months. I've tried talking to him about it, but he just gets defensive, like I'm the problem for wanting my husband to actually be present in our relationship. "You're not the problem," Micah said firmly. "You deserve better than that." The way he said it with such conviction made my heart skip. When was the last time Jonas had spoken to me with that kind of certainty about my worth? "I don't know what to do anymore," I admitted. "Sometimes I feel invisible in my own home." Micah reached across the table and briefly touched my hand. "You're definitely not invisible. Jonas is an idiot if he can't see what he has." The contact sent electricity through me. It was innocent enough, but it had been so long since anyone had touched me with intention, with care. "Thanks for listening," I said. "I know this puts you in an awkward position, being his brother and all. Hey, you're family too, and sometimes family means calling out bad behavior, even when it's uncomfortable." We started meeting regularly after that. Coffee dates that stretched into lunch dates that became evening drinks. I told myself it was harmless, just a friend helping me process my marital problems. Micah was easy to talk to, attentive in ways Jonas hadn't been in years. At home, the distance between Jonas and me grew wider. He'd started working even later, and when he was home, he seemed distracted, almost suspicious. "You've been going out a lot lately," he said one evening as I got ready for another work happy hour. "I'm allowed to have a social life," I replied, applying lipstick in our bedroom mirror. "Just because you want to live like a hermit doesn't mean I have to." "That's not what I meant. I just think maybe we should spend more time together, work on us." I turned to face him. "Now you want to work on us? After months of treating me like a roommate? I know I've been distracted with work, but—" "Distracted?" I laughed bitterly. "Jonas, you've been absent. There's a difference." He looked hurt, and for a moment I felt a pang of guilt. But then I thought about Micah, waiting for me at the wine bar downtown, ready to listen to whatever I needed to say, and the guilt faded. "I'll be back later," I said, grabbing my purse. "How much later?" "I don't know. Don't wait up." That night, Micah and I shared a bottle of wine and talked until the bar closed. He walked me to my car, and when he hugged me goodbye, it lasted longer than it should have. "You smell amazing," he whispered against my ear. I pulled back and looked into his eyes. The air between us crackled with possibility and danger. "Micah," I said softly, I know this is complicated, but I can't stop thinking about you, Aurelia. You deserve to feel wanted, to feel special." When I got home, Jonas was asleep. I stood in our bedroom doorway, watching him, and felt nothing but resentment. He looked peaceful, unburdened by the problems in our marriage, because he'd simply checked out instead of fighting for us. I slept in the guest room that night, telling myself it was because I didn't want to wake him. But really, I couldn't bear to lie next to someone who made me feel so alone. My phone buzzed with a text from Micah. "Thank you for tonight. You're incredible." I smiled in the darkness and typed back, "Thank you for making me feel like myself again." I should have stopped there. I should have recognized the warning signs, the way my heart raced when I thought about him, the way I was already emotionally cheating on my husband. But I didn't stop. Because for the first time in years, someone was choosing me, pursuing me, making me feel like I mattered, even if that someone was my husband's brother. The night everything changed started like any other family dinner at Miriam's house. Jonas's mother had insisted on her monthly tradition, gathering her 3 sons and their families around her dining room table. It should have been pleasant, normal, safe. Instead, it became the scene of my public humiliation of my husband. "Jonas, honey, you look tired," Miriam said as she passed the mashed potatoes. "Are you sleeping okay?" "He's fine, Miriam," I answered before Jonas could respond. "He just stays up too late grading papers. Apparently his students' homework is more important than getting adequate rest." The comment hung in the air awkwardly. Colin, Jonas's youngest brother, raised an eyebrow. Micah shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I'm sleeping fine, Mom," Jonas said quietly. Are you? I laughed, the sound sharper than I intended, because you've been falling asleep on the couch every night this week instead of coming to bed. Aurelia, Jonas said, a warning in his voice. But I was already too far gone, fueled by wine and weeks of resentment. What? It's true. Everyone here knows what a dedicated teacher you are. Sometimes I think you love those kids more than your own family. That's not fair, Jonas said. Isn't it? When's the last time you helped Eva with her homework? When's the last time you asked me about my day? You give everything to that school, and we get whatever's left over, which lately isn't much. The table fell silent. Eva, sitting between Colin and his girlfriend, looked confused and upset. Miriam's face had gone tight with disapproval. Maybe we should change the subject, Colin suggested diplomatically. No, it's fine, I said, taking another sip of wine. Everyone should know what St. Jonas is really like at home. He's so busy being everyone else's hero that he's forgotten how to be a husband. Aurelia, stop. Jonas's voice was firm now, embarrassed. Stop what? Telling the truth. You want to know the truth, Miriam. Your son comes home, eats dinner in silence, grades papers until midnight, and falls asleep on the couch. Every single day. That's my marriage. I caught Micah's eye across the table. He looked pained, conflicted. Good. At least someone here understood what I was going through. Marriage is work, dear, Miriam said carefully. Jonas has always been dedicated to his students. That's something to be proud of, not resentful about. Easy for you to say. You're not the one being ignored. I'm not ignoring you, Jonas said, his patience clearly wearing thin. I'm working hard to provide for our family. Provide what? Money? Because that's about all you contribute anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. Eva's eyes filled with tears, and Colin looked furious. I think maybe we should go, Jonas said, standing up. Yes, maybe you should, Miriam agreed, her tone icy as she looked at me. On the drive home, Jonas was silent until we pulled into our driveway. What the hell was that? He finally exploded. That was me being honest for once. That was you humiliating me in front of my family, in front of our daughter. Oh, now you care about Ava's feelings. Where was that concern when you missed her school play last week? I was at a mandatory district meeting and you know it. There's always something, Jonas. There's always an excuse. We stood in our kitchen, facing each other like opponents in a boxing ring. I'm trying my best here, Jonas said. I'm sorry if that's not enough for you anymore. It's not, I said coldly. It hasn't been for a long time. That night I texted Micah, I can't do this anymore. I need to see you. He responded immediately. Come over, we can talk. I should have stayed home. I should have tried to work things out with Jonas. Should have apologized for embarrassing him. Should have fought for my marriage instead of running away from it. But I didn't. I drove to Micah's apartment and knocked on his door at 11 o'clock at night. When he opened it, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, his hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it, I didn't say a word. I just walked into his arms and kissed him. Aurelia, he whispered against my lips. Are you sure? I thought about Jonas, probably sitting in his study grading papers, probably relieved that I was gone so he could work in peace. I'm sure, I said. We made love on his couch, desperate and hungry and wrong in every way that mattered. Afterward, as I lay against his chest, I felt simultaneously satisfied and hollow. I should go, I said. Stay, he murmured, just a little longer. But I couldn't. I had to get home before Jonas noticed I was gone. Had to maintain the illusion that our marriage was simply struggling instead of completely shattered. I drove home at 2 a.m, my hair messy and my clothes wrinkled, carrying the scent of another man on my skin. Jonas was asleep on the couch, his laptop open beside him, a stack of graded tests on the coffee table. Looking at him there, peaceful and unaware of what I'd just done, I felt a stab of something that might have been regret, but it was quickly replaced by anger. This was his fault. If he'd been a better husband, if he'd paid attention to me, if he'd fought for us instead of just accepting our slow drift apart, none of this would have happened. I covered him with a blanket and went upstairs to shower, washing away the evidence of my betrayal while telling myself I'd had no choice. I was wrong about that too. The next few weeks passed in a blur of lies and secret meetings. I became an expert at deception, crafting elaborate stories about work events and girls' nights that didn't exist. Micah and I met at his apartment twice more, each encounter more desperate than the last. At home, Jonas grew increasingly suspicious. He started asking more questions about my whereabouts, paying closer attention to my phone, watching me with those careful eyes that had once made me feel loved, but now made me feel trapped. "You seem different lately," he said one morning over coffee. "Different how?" I asked, not looking up from my phone where Micah had just texted me good morning. "I don't know. Distant. Like you're somewhere else even when you're here." The irony wasn't lost on me. "That's rich coming from you." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, Jonas. Forget it." But he wouldn't let it go. "No, tell me. What did you mean by that?" I set down my phone and looked at him. "You've been emotionally absent from this marriage for months, years maybe, and now you're upset because I'm finally doing the same thing?" "I haven't been absent, I've been working." "Same thing." Eva wandered into the kitchen then, still in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. At 8 years old, she was old enough to sense the tension between us, but too young to understand it. "Why are you guys always mad at each other?" she asked, climbing onto Jonas's lap. "We're not mad, sweetheart," Jonas said, kissing the top of her head. "Mommy and Daddy are just talking." "It sounds like fighting," Eva said matter-of-factly. I felt a pang of guilt. We were affecting our daughter with our problems, and that wasn't fair to her. "I'm sorry, baby," I said, reaching over to smooth her hair. "We'll try to be quieter." But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. Things were going to get worse before they got better, and Eva was going to be caught in the crossfire. That afternoon, while Jonas was at school and Eva was at her friend's house, I met Micah at a small restaurant across town. We chose a corner booth, somewhere we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. "This is getting complicated," Micah said, stirring his coffee nervously. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I feel guilty every time I see Jonas. He's my brother, Aurelia, and he has no idea what's happening." "He doesn't care what's happening," I said. "If he did, he'd pay more attention to his wife." "But what if he finds out? What if someone sees us?" I reached across the table and took his hand. "No one's going to find out. We're being careful." But even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. Earlier that week, I'd thought I saw Colin's girlfriend at the grocery store, and I'd quickly ducked down another aisle. I'd been getting sloppy, taking risks I shouldn't take. "Maybe we should cool things off for a while," Micah said, "just until things settle down at home." "Is that what you want?" I asked, hurt creeping into my voice. "No, it's not what I want, but it might be what's best." "For who? For Jonas? What about what's best for me?" Micah sighed. "I don't know, Aurelia. This whole situation is messed up." I pulled my hand back, feeling rejected and angry. "Fine, if that's how you feel." "That's not how I feel. I'm crazy about you, you know that. But I'm also terrified of what happens when this comes out. It won't come out if we're careful." But I was wrong about that too. That evening, Jonas was waiting for me when I got home from my supposed work meeting. "How was your day?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Fine. Busy. You know how it is." "Actually, I don't. Your boss called looking for you around 3, said you'd left early for a dentist appointment, but when I mentioned your work meeting, she seemed confused." My blood ran cold. She must have mixed up the schedule. "Must have," Jonas agreed, but his eyes said he didn't believe me. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Jonas slept beside me. I could feel everything starting to unravel, could sense that my carefully constructed lies were beginning to collapse. My phone buzzed with a text from Micah. I'm sorry about today. I don't want to lose you. I smiled in the darkness and typed back, you won't. But deep down, I knew I was living on borrowed time. The question wasn't whether Jonas would find out about the affair. The question was when, and what he would do when he did. I should have been afraid. Instead, I was almost relieved at the thought of not having to pretend anymore. That was my biggest mistake yet. The truth came out on a Thursday evening in the most mundane way possible. Jonas was doing laundry, something he'd started doing more often since I'd been working late so frequently, and he found a receipt in my pants pocket. "What's this?" he asked, holding up the small piece of paper. I glanced at it and my heart stopped. It was from the restaurant where Micah and I had met the day before, time-stamped at 2:30 p.m. on a day when I'd told Jonas I was in back-to-back meetings until 5. "I don't know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Probably just something I picked up somewhere." "It's from yesterday, from Café Luna. You told me you were at work all day yesterday." "I was. I must have grabbed lunch there during my break." Jonas looked at the receipt more carefully. "It's for 2 meals, Aurelia. 2 drinks. Who were you with?" My mind raced, searching for a plausible explanation. "Marina. We grabbed a quick lunch between meetings. Marina's in Chicago this week for her sister's wedding. She posted about it on Facebook." The lie crumbled in my hands like ash. I could see the exact moment Jonas's suspicions crystallized into certainty. His face went very still, very calm, which was somehow more terrifying than if he'd started yelling. "Who are you with?" he asked again, his voice deadly quiet. "Jonas, I can explain. Who were you with?" I could have lied again. I could have made up another story, bought myself more time, but I was tired of lying, tired of sneaking around, tired of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. "Micah," I said. The silence that followed was deafening. Jonas stared at me like I was a stranger, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time in years. "My brother," he said finally. "Yes. How long?" "Jonas. How long, Aurelia?" 3 weeks, maybe 4. He sat down heavily on our bed, still holding the receipt. "Are you sleeping with him?" I could have lied about that too. But what was the point? "Yes," I whispered. Jonas closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, something fundamental had changed in his expression. The love I'd taken for granted for 8 years was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. "I want you to leave," he said. "What?" "Pack a bag, go to your mother's, go to a hotel, I don't care. But I want you out of this house tonight. You can't kick me out. This is my house too." "You're right," he said, standing up. "You can stay. I'll go." "Jonas, wait. We need to talk about this." "Talk about what? About how you've been lying to me for weeks? About how you're fucking my brother behind my back?" The venom in his voice shocked me. Jonas never swore, never raised his voice, never lost control. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "I never meant for this to happen." "But it did happen. You made it happen." "We can work through this. People get past affairs all the time." Jonas laughed, a harsh sound I'd never heard from him before. "With my brother, Aurelia? You think we can work through you sleeping with my brother? If you'd been a better husband—" "Don't!" His voice cut through the air like a blade. "Don't you dare try to make this my fault." "I'm not saying it's your fault, but you have to admit our marriage was already in trouble." "So you decided to fuck my brother instead of talking to me about it." I flinched at his language, at the disgust in his voice. "Where's Eva?" he asked suddenly. "At your mother's. She's staying the night, remember? Good, at least she doesn't have to see this." Jonas moved to our closet and pulled out a suitcase. He started throwing clothes into it with sharp, angry movements. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving. I need time to think, and I can't do that with you here." "Jonas, please, we can fix this." He stopped packing and turned to face me. "Fix this?" "Aurelia, you destroyed our marriage. You destroyed my relationship with my brother. You destroyed our family. There's nothing left to fix. That's not true. We have Eva. We have 8 years together. We have nothing, he said flatly. Whatever we had, you threw it away the first time you kissed him. He zipped up the suitcase and headed for the door. Where are you going? I asked. Collins. And don't call me. Don't text me. When I'm ready to talk, I'll let you know. After he left, I sat alone in our bedroom, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage. I picked up my phone to call Micah, but then put it down again. This was bigger than just the affair now. This was about family, about betrayal, about consequences I hadn't fully considered. For the first time since this whole thing started, I was truly afraid of what I'd done. And I was right to be. 3 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Jonas stayed at Colin's house and communicated with me only through terse text messages about Eva's schedule. He picked her up for school in the mornings and brought her home in the evenings, but he wouldn't come inside, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't engage in any conversation beyond the absolutely necessary. Eva knew something was wrong, but at 8 years old, she couldn't fully grasp the magnitude of what was happening. Why doesn't Daddy sleep here anymore? She asked one night as I tucked her into bed. Daddy and Mommy are having some problems right now, I said carefully, but we both love you very much. Are you getting divorced like Emma's parents? The question hit me like a punch to the stomach. I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe. Will I have to choose who to live with? Let's not worry about that right now, okay? Everything's going to be fine. But everything was not going to be fine, and I was starting to realize just how much trouble I was in. Micah had been avoiding me since the truth came out. He'd sent one text apologizing and saying he needed space to figure things out. When I'd driven to his apartment, he hadn't answered the door, even though his car was in the parking lot. My mother, Sophie, had been supportive but practical. These things happen, honey, she'd said over coffee. Men sometimes neglect their wives, and wives sometimes stray. It's not the end of the world. But Miriam, Jonas's mother, had made her feelings crystal clear when she'd called to arrange picking up Eva for the weekend. I hope you're proud of yourself, she'd said coldly. You've destroyed my family. Miriam, I know you're upset. Upset? Aurelia, you seduced one son and betrayed the other. Upset doesn't begin to cover how I feel about you right now. The call had ended with her hanging up on me. I was beginning to understand that this wasn't just about my marriage anymore. I'd created a rift in the entire Fenwick family, and the sides were being drawn clearly. Everyone was choosing Jonas. That's when I got the call from the law office. Mrs. Fenwick, this is Patricia Williams from Williams & Associates. I represent your husband in a domestic matter. I need to schedule a meeting with you to discuss some documents. What kind of documents? I'd prefer to discuss that in person. Are you available tomorrow at 2 o'clock? I'm at work tomorrow. This is time-sensitive, Mrs. Fenwick. I'd suggest making arrangements. Something in her tone made my blood run cold. What is this about? I'll see you tomorrow at 2, she said, and hung up. I called in sick to work the next day and drove to the law office with shaking hands. Patricia Williams was a sharp-looking woman in her 50s, with steel-grey hair and calculating eyes. Please sit down, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. I'll get right to the point. My client is filing for divorce. The words hit me, even though I'd been expecting them. Okay. He's also filing for full custody of your daughter. What? He can't do that. Actually, he can. And given the circumstances of your marriage's dissolution, he has a strong case. She slid a thick folder across the desk. These are copies of the documents we'll be filing. I suggest you review them carefully and retain counsel. I opened the folder with trembling hands. The first document was a petition for divorce citing adultery. The second was a custody petition requesting full physical custody of Eva with supervised visitation for me. This is insane, I said. I'm her mother. You're also an adulteress who destroyed her family. Judges tend to take a dim view of that, especially when children are involved. It was just an affair. People have affairs all the time. With their husband's brother, while living in the family home, while lying to their child about their whereabouts. Patricia's voice was clinical, detached. Mrs. Fenwick, you didn't just have an affair, you committed a calculated betrayal that destroyed multiple family relationships. That speaks to character, and character matters in custody cases. I flipped through more documents, financial disclosures, asset inventories, a proposed settlement that left me with almost nothing. He can't take everything, I said. He's not taking everything. He's asking for the house, which he can afford to maintain on his teacher's salary, and which would provide stability for Eva. He's asking for primary custody, which any judge will likely grant given your behavior. And he's asking for a division of assets that reflects the fact that you destroyed the marriage. I have rights too. Yes, you do, and I suggest you hire a lawyer to protect them. But I'll be honest with you, Mrs. Fenwick, your position is not strong. I left the law office in a daze. This couldn't be happening. Jonas was supposed to be the gentle one, the pushover, the man who avoided conflict at all costs. This calculated legal assault felt like it was coming from a stranger. That evening, Eva was at Miriam's house for the weekend, and I sat alone in our kitchen with a bottle of wine and the divorce papers. I called Micah, desperate to talk to someone who might understand. Hello? His voice was cautious. It's me. Jonas is divorcing me. He's trying to take Eva. Silence. Micah, are you there? I'm here. I'm sorry, Aurelia. I really am. We need to talk. This affects you too. No, it doesn't. I'm staying out of this. You can't stay out of this. You're part of it. I made a mistake, he said quietly. A huge mistake. And now I have to live with it. But I'm not getting dragged into a custody battle. So you're just abandoning me. I'm protecting what's left of my family. Jonas is my brother, Aurelia. He was my brother before any of this happened, and he'll be my brother after it's over. What about us? There is no us. There never really was. We were just two people making a terrible decision. The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, realizing for the first time how completely alone I was. I'd lost my husband, my brother-in-law, my daughter's stability, and possibly my daughter herself. And the worst part was, I was starting to understand that Jonas wasn't the weak, passive man I'd thought he was. He was methodical, patient, and when pushed too far, absolutely ruthless. I was about to learn just how ruthless he could be. The papers were served on a Tuesday morning at exactly 9:47 a.m. I know the exact time, because I was in the middle of a presentation to our biggest client when Patricia Williams walked into our conference room flanked by a process server. Aurelia Fenwick? The server asked. I looked around the room at my colleagues, at my boss, at the client representatives who were staring at this unexpected interruption. Yes? You're being served with divorce and custody papers. Please sign here acknowledging receipt. The room went dead silent. I could feel every eye on me as I signed the papers with shaking hands, my professional reputation crumbling in real time. Thank you, the server said, and left as quickly as he'd arrived. Patricia Williams lingered for a moment, her eyes cold and satisfied. Have a good day, Mrs. Fenwick, she said, and followed the server out. I stood there holding the papers, my face burning with embarrassment, while my boss cleared his throat awkwardly. Perhaps we should reschedule this meeting, he suggested. The client representatives filed out quickly, avoiding eye contact. My colleagues followed, whispering among themselves. Within minutes, I was alone in the conference room with my boss, David. Aurelia, what the hell was that? It's personal, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Personal? You just got served divorce papers in front of our biggest client. That's not personal anymore, that's professional suicide. I can explain. Don't. Just don't. Take the rest of the day off. We'll talk tomorrow about how to handle this. I drove home in a daze, the papers sitting on my passenger seat like a ticking bomb. When I got there, I spread them out on my kitchen table and really read them for the first time. It was worse than I'd thought. Jonas wasn't just asking for custody of Eva. He was asking for supervised visitation for me, claiming I was an unfit mother due to my pattern of deception and moral turpitude. He had evidence, phone records showing dozens of calls and texts to Micah during times when I'd claimed to be working. Credit card statements showing charges at restaurants and hotels when I'd said I was at home. Even witness statements from family members describing my behavior at dinner parties and family gatherings. He'd been building a case against me for weeks, maybe longer. While I'd been sneaking around with his brother, he'd been documenting every lie, every deception, every moment of my betrayal. The financial settlement was equally devastating. He wanted the house, the majority of our savings, and primary custody. I would be left with my car, half of my 401k, and weekend visitation with my own daughter. My phone rang. It was Marina calling from Chicago. "Oh my God, Aurelia, I just heard. Are you okay? How did you hear? Priya from your office called me. She said you got served at work, in front of everyone." The humiliation washed over me again. By tomorrow, everyone in my professional network would know about my divorce, about the affair, about the spectacular way my life was falling apart. "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "You need a lawyer, a good one." "I know, I never thought Jonas would be this vindictive." "Honey, you slept with his brother. What did you expect?" The blunt truth of it hit me like a slap. I'd been so focused on justifying my actions, on blaming Jonas for neglecting me, that I'd never really considered how devastating my betrayal must have been for him. "I need to see Ava," I said suddenly. "I need to explain this to her before someone else does." But when I called Miriam's house, where Eva was staying after school, Jonas answered. "She's not available," he said coldly. "She's my daughter, Jonas. I have a right to see her." "Actually, you don't. Not until this is settled in court. You can't keep her from me." "I can, and I will. You made your choice, Aurelia. Now live with the consequences." "Jonas, please don't punish Eva because you're angry with me." "I'm not punishing Eva. I'm protecting her. From you." The line went dead. I sat in my empty house, surrounded by the remnants of the life I'd destroyed, and finally understood the full scope of what I'd lost. It wasn't just my marriage. It wasn't just my relationship with Micah. I'd lost my daughter, my reputation, my financial security, and my place in the only family I'd ever really known. And Jonas, the man I'd dismissed as weak and passive, had orchestrated it all with the precision of a master chess player. The next morning, I woke up to find a moving truck in my driveway. Jonas was directing 2 movers as they carried his belongings out of our house. "What are you doing?" I asked, still in my robe. "Moving out. The house is going on the market next week." "You can't sell our house." "It's not our house anymore. It's an asset to be divided in the divorce." I watched helplessly as they loaded his desk, his books, his clothes. 8 years of shared life reduced to boxes and furniture. "Where's Eva?" "Safe," he said without looking at me. "Jonas, we need to talk about this, about all of this." He finally turned to face me, and I was shocked by what I saw. The gentle man I'd married was gone, replaced by someone harder, colder, more determined than I'd ever imagined he could be. "There's nothing to talk about," he said. "You destroyed our family. Now I'm building a new one. Without you." As the moving truck pulled away, I realized that Jonas hadn't just won. He'd annihilated me, using nothing but the truth and the legal system. And the most devastating part was that I'd given him all the ammunition he needed,